All right, so I got to put you on the spot here. So you came from the same room as Ben Askren and Tyron Woodley. You talked about those guys earlier. You're one of the few guys that have seen those two go at it. Ben Askren is undefeated. Tyron Woodley is the world champion. But you know who is the better fighter. You know the answer to this question. Can you tell me?
Actually, I've actually never been in the same mixed martial arts room with them, to be honest with you. I've never seen them spar. When it came to wrestling, Ben was head and shoulders above Tyron. Ben has a way of neutralizing every single one of your weapons. You look at Tyron Woodley; he's one of the most explosive, athletic, strongest, well-timed athletes in the entire world, in my opinion. And obviously, I'm a little bit biased, but Ben's the kind of guy that negates every single one of those things. It doesn't matter who you are, what day it is, how in shape Ben is. He's going to take away 90% of your arsenal, 90% of your weapons. He's going to roll you up and he's going to pin you. I'm not saying that he would go out there and pin Tyron in a wrestling match, but I think Ben definitely won that wrestling battle, and I can't attest to those guys sparring. You know, I think Ben has a very similar style when it comes to mixed martial arts as he did with wrestling. He's going to grab you, he's going to pick you up, he's going to put you down, he's going to make you hate your life for as long as the ref lets him torture you. So then you look at Tyron, the guy can knock out he would knock out King Kong, so it would be an interesting matchup, and luckily I wouldn't have to pick and I wouldn't have to see them fight because I wouldn't want to see them fight.
Yeah, I could imagine. I just love those old practice room stories. I came from a practice room. So many people would pay on pay-per-view or they'd ask questions. Who'd win between Randy Couture and Dan Henderson? Well, I know the answer. I watched it happen, but I can never say. Who'd win between Evan Tanner and Matt Lindland? Or, Matt Lindland and Dan Henderson, just go through the mix. It's like, well, I know the answer to that. I watched them fight, but I will take it to the grave. You can never tell those stories. And I'm starting to think that there's got to be like a moratorium on that. There has to be some amount of time that goes by where then it is okay to start telling those stories because they're really interesting. The practice room stories, particularly wrestling and the martial arts background. If we would have had cameras set up, if we would have documented some of that, you could sell it on pay-per-view right now. The most fascinating matches ever took place in the practice room.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's the practice room too is such a, it's so much different than the fight. A lot of times, there's some guys who, I'm sure you can attest to this. You go to the practice room and you can watch a guy and he looks like a top 100 fighter in the world. But then you put him under the lights, you put him inside the cage, and he shines like a rock star, and he looks like the best guy in the world. And then there's the opposite, where some guys are practice room guys, and then they get under the lights and they clam up, or they get scared. They don't open up. They beat themselves a lot of times. And it's such a crazy sport, and it's so much different than football, baseball, basketball. It's so much different. And people who are just fans who have never competed in wrestling or mixed martial arts, they don't understand the intricacies of the emotional roller coaster that we have had to go through from wrestling into mixed martial arts, and then as mixed martial artists, how much is on the line now. Back in wrestling, it was just, I just don't want to lose to this Oklahoma State guy because they're our arch nemesis. I just don't want to lose to him because I'm Mizzou and Mizzou pride and this and that. Now, you lose a fight, you're losing money, you're losing you're taking a notch on your record, a loss on your record, you're losing a little bit of your world ranking. Now you've got to get back a couple more fights till you can get another big money fight and this and that. So there's so much more on the line. There's so much pressure in the sport. So it's such an interesting, crazy sport, both the sport of wrestling, which I love honestly more than the sport of mixed martial arts, if I'm completely honest. And it's just such an interesting thing. But I agree. If you had some video footage, some live feed footage of some of those sparring matches with some of these guys, it would be